I'm Nick Whalen from RotoWire. We got some bold predictions for week 7 of the NFL season. Let's get right into it. The Detroit Lions, they keep it rolling, and they hand Minnesota its first loss of the season. Look, I know Minnesota's 5-0. I know they've been the best defense in the NFL this season, but I'm still surprised that line is holding at Vikings minus 2.5. Lions, they don't have Aiden Hutchinson. That is a massive loss. He's got as many sacks as the rest of the team combined, but I think they could find ways to compensate. Detroit, to me, is the most balanced team in the NFL. They could rip off big plays with Jameson Williams. They have an elite number one in Amon-Ra St. Brown, an excellent tight end, and Sam Laporta, who it feels like they barely used this season. Tim Patrick even looked good last week against Dallas. And, of course, the best 1-2 running back combo in the NFL behind the league's best offensive line. When it comes to Minnesota, the resume, it's impressive. They're not beating up on bad teams. In fact, they're doing the complete opposite. If anything, Vikings are coming off of a bye. They are at home. Those are advantages. But Aaron Jones is banged up. We did start to see some slippage from Sam Darnold in London before the bye. I'm not saying he's going to turn back into a pumpkin, but, you know, it is Sam Darnold, and we need to keep that in mind. I do think Brian Flores will be able to make things difficult on Jared Goff. I don't think this looks anything like last week in Dallas, but I really trust the infrastructure of this Lions team. So many playmakers that a defense has to worry about. I think Detroit goes in, asserts its dominance, wins this game outright, and officially establishes itself as the best team in the NFC. All right, our second bold prediction for week 7. The calls for Joe Flacco start coming in Indy. And look, I know Joe Flacco's been starting for the Colts, but I think they go back to Anthony Richardson this week. And I don't know if that's the best thing for the Indianapolis Colts if they want to win games in the short term. Last week, Joe Flacco once again did what Joe Flacco does. He wins football games for teams in need. He's now beaten the Steelers and the Titans. He almost led a crazy comeback to beat the Jags 2 weeks ago. In all likelihood, I think the Colts do go back to Richardson this week. They have a very winnable game against the Miami Dolphins, a game we should expect them to win. But if I'm the Dolphins, I'd rather see Richardson than Joe Flacco right now. I know it sounds crazy, but Richardson brings the running ability that Flacco obviously does not. But Flacco is so superior as a passer that I think he's the better option if the Colts' goal is to win games. Now, if their goal is development, then yeah, of course, Richardson has to be the guy. He was drafted as the future of the franchise, and he should be given ample opportunity to be that guy. But if the Colts lose to Miami this week, if Richardson comes back, he turns it over 2 or 3 times, he just kind of looks lost like he has early this season, I'm telling you, those calls for Joe Flacco are going to start coming. Would that be in the Colts' best interest long-term? Probably not. Is he a real solution at this point in his career? No, he's not. But Shane Steichen wants to win games. This front office needs to win games. And I think after this week, if the Dolphins pull the upset coming out of the bye, Joe Flacco versus Anthony Richardson will become a real debate. Our third bold prediction for week 7, we're sticking in the AFC South. Doug Peterson will not be fired after the Jags take care of business as favorites in London. Frankly, I do think this is a bold prediction. Doug Peterson keeping his job is a bold prediction. I was going to predict that he was fired after this week, and I thought about it. I was like, I don't think that's even remotely bold. It's hard to find next coach fired odds anywhere legitimate, but Peterson would have to be like, I don't know, minus 350 right now. But this is his final stand. If the Jags lose this game, he's out, and he might be stuck in England for a while. I don't think there would be any coming back from that. But we have to keep in mind, the Jags are 5.5-point favorites for a reason. I am a Jaguars fan. That feels crazy. They shouldn't be giving points to anybody, but it signals that there's still a lingering belief in this team not being quite as bad as it's looked so far this season. And, I subscribe to that to some degree. I do think the pass defense in the secondary is as bad as it's looked. It's the worst unit in football right now, but this offense should be much better. And I think this is the week against a very, very bad and very, very banged up Patriots team that just gave up 41 points to the Houston Texans without Nico Collins. I think Jacksonville gets back on track. I think we see a lot of Tank Bigsby with ETN banged up. We're going to see an efficient Trevor Lawrence. He's got Evan Ingram back. That makes a big difference, as long as he's not fumbling the ball, of course. Should be a nice bounce back spot for Brian Thomas as well, who had one of not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 dropped touchdown passes for the Jags last week. Jacksonville is still a very bad team. Doug Peterson probably still deserves to be fired, even if they win this game. But I think the Jags put it on New England. I think they stop the bleeding, at least temporarily. And Doug Peterson hangs on to his job for at least another week. Doug Peterson is not fired this week. Our third bold prediction for week 7. Before we get to our final 2 predictions, please give this video a like if you're enjoying it, and make sure you're subscribed to the RotoWire YouTube channel. We've been bringing you a ton of content through the first few weeks of the NFL season. We're going to continue that all the way through week 18, so make sure you're subscribed. Just click that subscribe button right there, RotoWire YouTube channel. All right, next up, Jayden Daniels. Jayden Daniels gets his first 100-yard rushing game in the NFL this week against Carolina. Now, last week, one of my bold predictions was that Daniels would lead the Commanders to a win over Baltimore and officially assert himself as a real MVP candidate. He did not do that, but I still came away impressed with Daniels and the Commanders overall. Their ability to limit mistakes, hang around in that game with an elite team in Baltimore. Daniels has just 2 turnovers through 6 games. He's been dialed in as a passer, even though the efficiency isn't quite at the insane level that it was through the first 4 games of the year. Now you come out of that Baltimore matchup, you get the worst defense in the NFL in Carolina. The Panthers have allowed 38, 36, and 34 points over their last 4 games. They allowed 47 to the Saints in week 1. This is a no doubt smash spot for Jayden Daniels, both as a passer and maybe even more so as a runner. Carolina, keep in mind, they haven't really seen a true running quarterback yet this season. They did face Caleb Williams a couple weeks ago. He's mobile, but he's not in the same class as Jayden Daniels. And other than that, it's been Kirk Cousins, Joe Burrow, Gardner Minshew, Justin Herbert, Derek Carr. None of those guys really scaring you with their legs. Scheming against Jayden Daniels is a completely different ballgame. They have not faced anybody like him so far this year. And the Panthers have injuries all over that defense. The defensive line has 4 guys on IR. Their best linebacker is out for the year. They have 3 more linebackers currently injured. They're down a couple pieces in the secondary. Not only is this a bad defense, but it is a wounded defense right now. I think Jayden Daniels goes off this week. He rips off a couple long scrambles, not just his first 100-yard rushing game in the NFL. All right, our 5th and final bold prediction for week 7. This is more of a longer-term bold prediction, if you will, but I think the Pittsburgh Steelers go back to Justin Fields within a month. All right, so we know Russell Wilson is back healthy, and he'll take over for Fields this week against the New York Jets. Jets are slight road favorites, and I actually kind of like the spot for New York to finally bounce back. Really doesn't have anything to do with Devontae Adams, by the way, assuming he plays, but certainly doesn't hurt dropping him into that offense. But frankly, I thought the Steelers had a pretty good thing going with Justin Fields. You know, not exactly lighting up the scoreboard on a weekly basis, but they were off to a 4-2 start. They're tied atop the AFC North right now. And I think for this current roster, there's an argument that Fields makes a lot more sense. They need his escapability. They need his ability to execute designed runs, just be a threat for what's otherwise a very limited offense. When it comes to Russell Wilson, is he a better pure passer? Of course. But at this point in his career, we know Russell Wilson is a far cry from the guy that he was during the peak Seattle days. That's not coming back. You know, he's not the type of quarterback who elevates mediocre talent in one of the worst wide receiver rooms in the NFL. And that's really, if we're being realistic, what the Steelers have. If you have the weapons, if you have the pass catchers, then I think going to Russell Wilson makes sense. But the Steelers don't. I think it's a bad fit. And, you know, maybe it's something the Steelers feel like they need to see through, given the relatively modest, ultimately, investment in Russell Wilson. But I see this being a very rough adjustment. I think the players on this team really like Justin Fields, and you're switching to a completely different type of quarterback who just doesn't really fit the personnel on this roster. We'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Wilson comes in, he lights up the Jets defense that looked terrible against Buffalo on Monday night, but I don't see things going well for Pittsburgh as the schedule starts to pick up. I think they go back to Justin Fields within the next 4 or 5 games.